The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to the Arise to Success show where we aim to highlight inspiring individuals and their journeys to success. My name is Jihad, I'm your host in this show. Our guest today is Sonia Yekinni, who is a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counsellor and Coach. BACP is the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. So Sonia is a member with them and she is also the founder of Balancing Bridges. Balancing Bridges is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to become. This bespoke service integrates creative therapeutic approaches and coaching skills to allow clients to consciously explore, restore, and thrive. Sonia, what a great pleasure having you with us today, and welcome to the Arise to Success show. How are you doing, Sonia?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well, thank you. Thank you for such a warm welcome, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair. And Sonia, mashallah, being the founder of Balancing Bridges, where you seemed, mashallah, to combine all your expertise to help clients, which is amazing, mashallah. If we can perhaps start by you telling us a bit more about Balancing Bridges and how you help your clients, and then inshallah we'll talk a little bit more about you later on as well.
Sure. So Balancing Bridges is a service that's pretty bespoke. So I offer one-to-one therapy and coaching weekly to my clients, and really it's about being focused on clients. That I joke in that sometimes my clients think that they're my only client because my focus is so much on them and what's going on for them, and really investing in what's going to help them shift and move forward in the way that's supportive for them. So all of it is online, and that was a conscious choice because the world is so global and I want to be able to reach as many different people as possible. And give them that space that they really do need and deserve.
MashaAllah, that's amazing, MashaAllah. And I love how you combine the different backgrounds that you have, because we either can have counselors or coaches, but you combine the two together, MashaAllah. So how does that help your clients? And is it better just having one area of expertise? So let me clarify that a bit more. Is it that when you with your clients, do you use both counseling and coaching, or does it depend on the client and what their needs are?
Yeah, totally. So it sometimes depends on the client, because they come and they're very sure they don't want therapy and they definitely want coaching, or
Yeah.
they don't want coaching and they definitely want therapy. How I work is that I have a framework in which I can take clients from therapy to coaching. So it's really about understanding what that deep need is and getting them to rebalance where they're at. And once we have gotten to a point that we feel that their concern has been rebalanced enough, that they feel like they're strong enough, healthy enough, emotionally regulating enough, we can start to think about what are those future actions and really hold them accountable and be excited and think about those aspirations. So I think it's the best of both worlds for me, and clients come knowing that they can stay with the same practitioner throughout their whole journey. It can be quite tiresome and a struggle to find the right therapist or the right coach. So the idea that they don't have to leave to go and do coaching stuff, or that they can start from therapy and go all the way to coaching is, I feel very blessed, and that I'm able to offer that.
Definitely. And a lot of clients, that trust aspect is a big part of, therapy or coaching, that once they feel comfortable with somebody, they just want to stay with them. And it's that trust that they built. So that's really great, mashallah, they offer the two. I'm wondering here, if somebody, for example, comes and they want to do coaching and they want to, they have a specific goal that they want to achieve, but then you feel that there was something holding them back and they might benefit a little bit more of counseling. I'm wondering here, do you kind of take them to counseling and then come back to coaching, or what's the best strategy that you follow?
So it goes back to this being a bespoke service. I follow the strategy that best supports my client. So it's a very honest conversation space. You know, we have to be honest. If you're not ready to be honest, you can't be in these spaces. So actually highlighting that, well, if these things do come up, perhaps it's a question to say we've got to recontract for therapy, or we can say that therapy is ending here, and what would we like our transition to then be, so that we can move towards coaching. So it really isn't a black and white thing, and it isn't a thing of kind of, okay, I'm going to tell you that you can't do coaching right now. It is a discussion. It is a collaborative process.
Yeah, and I love that, the fact that, of course, we taking client into perspective as well. So that's great. And when did you start this service, and what motivated you to starting it?
Oh, there's so many answers to that one. Officially,
Mm,
it started in 2021, as soon as I
mm,
qualified, after I went back to university. I went back to
mm.
university after 10 years of
Oh,
being
wow.
out of education. So, in
That's
a
a great
sense, it
start.
feels like, yeah, in a
Mm,
sense, it feels like it started so much further beyond that. It started back in like 2017, when I decided to kind of say, okay, I've got to go back and train, and I want to take it seriously.
mm,
Um, in terms of my motivations, there's a lot of a mixture there.
mm,
I've I've always been one to be drawn to supporting people while they are doing their best to be resilient and feeling as though they're falling short.
mm,
And I really do believe that Allah gave me my own ability to sit with difficulty. So that's part
mm,
of my motivation. The other is I come from a creative background, and
mm,
so I kind of decided to pause that a little bit. I still get to use a lot of my creativity in with clients, but I decided to pause that, and I was wondering, well, what else can I do? I want to be able to have more of a human connection, because I felt like I was
mm.
spending all my time on a laptop.
Yeah.
For all those who
Mm,
understand what a Mac monkey is.
yeah.
Um, uh, um, may Allah bless my mom. She kept all of my school reports all the way back to when I was in like primary school, and all of them
Mm,
in some shape or form had Sonia is helpful, or Sonia is a good listener. And you know what?
mm.
That makes sense. Let me go and go and study
Yeah.
psychology and counseling. Why not? So
Yeah.
that's why I said there's quite a few answers to it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And where you said that you've read notes that, Sonia's helpful, good listener, and so on. It shows sometimes that, listening to people's feedback is really good for us to understand more about ourselves. And a lot of people say that. It's like, if you're not sure what kind of person you are, ask others what they think of you. So it's good that, mashallah, you've taken that into perspective and kind of chose something that you feel is more comfortable for you. And going to university after 10 years, how does that feel like? That's a brave step, mashallah.
Yeah, that was special.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic, so it was just also the kind of thing of, oh, how am I going to keep up with assignments? How am I going to keep up with reading lists?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's Allah's mercy, because I
Mm,
was also, not only was I studying, doing my clinical placements, I did two.
mm,
I
mm.
also was working, so I worked basically at night and went to school during the day, and well,
Wow.
university during the day, and did my placements during the day as well.
Mm.
So yeah, a lot, but honestly, it shows you who you are when you're put to like the test like that.
Yeah, but if you were willing to take that step, knowing that you will have to put in a lot of hard work.
Honestly, I don't think I realized just how much hard
Yeah.
work it was going to be. And that's often the case, that if
Mm,
you saw what you were going to have to do before it, perhaps
mm.
you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I had enough insight. However, I was determined. I was determined to say that I wanted to have that career change,
Yeah.
and want to be of use, want to be able to extend goods to others. And this was the path that I chose.
That's amazing, mashallah. And with the career change, so you had a different qualification 10 years prior to going to university, and you're working for 10 years with that, I'm assuming, right?
Correct.
And then you decided to make that change. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that because not many people find it easy to do that. Some people may be thinking, well, actually, you know what? I've been doing this for a very long time. That's all my qualification is. I'll just have to carry on with that. Can you tell us more about that change and what motivated you to take that change and that transition?
It's an interesting question, because it's not quite one thing, and it's not
Mm,
quite as simple. It kind of slowly unfolded. However, what was really important was that I did get the clarity that in order to continue in the profession that I was doing and how I experienced it, so I was an illustrator and graphic designer, I had to put my whole heart into it.
Mm,
And I decided that I didn't want that to be my whole heart, and I didn't
mm,
want that to be my whole life. And so
mm,
that was the deep motivation, was that I wanted to do something that gave more room for all the other things that I knew I wanted to
mm,
honor, to invest in when it comes to myself.
mm,
And it wasn't a hard decision when I understood that, but it was a hard decision leading up to it. And in
yeah,
terms of that change, it happened gradually. I can't
mm,
tell you how many times while I was, studying, I'm like, when is this change going to happen? It's
mm,
still not changing. I may have, passed a particular level, and that still wasn't a big enough change. And so I did have to learn that there wasn't a big change that was happening. It was being really grateful and present with the small shifts along the way, because they build
mm.
up to the big change.
Oh, absolutely. I love that, mashallah. And I just want to highlight that part is that, sometimes when we are uncomfortable, we don't have to remain where we are. We can look for options and see where we find ourselves and making, those changes. Because then if we don't make those changes, it means that we're going to stay the rest of our lives doing something that we don't enjoy. So it is worth sometimes putting a little bit of effort into it, but to make it a better future for us, inshallah. So I'm just going to just remind our dear listeners, just in case anybody joins a bit later, is that we have Sonia Yekinni on the show with us today, who's a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counsellor and Coach, and the founder of Balancing Bridges, which is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to be. I have forgotten to mention earlier, so I'll mention it now that this is actually a pre-recorded show, so we're not going to be able to take any questions today, but please feel free to send your thoughts about the show on 07779 481822, or you can comment on Facebook as well. So coming back to yourself, Sonia, mashallah, I find it really, really amazing that, after 10 years, you've decided to make those shifts towards something that you enjoy a bit more. So coming back to the service that you're offering, is it specifically Balancing Bridges? Is it specifically for Muslims? And how is the demand? I'm wondering, how is the demand of Muslims using the service? Because I noticed, alhamdulillah, that is changing, but in a lot of the cultures, or a lot of Muslims believe that we should have that trust in Allah, and we don't need, kind of like, they don't really give mental health much a focus. So I'm wondering, how is that for your service?
So the service isn't specifically for Muslims.
Mm,
However, about 95% are Muslims.
yeah,
So, alhamdulillah, qadar, that's what's happening.
yeah,
There is a demand. I think the demand is quite specific, in
mm,
that mostly it's Muslim women from minority backgrounds,
mm,
and that reflects part of how I identify to them as
mm,
well. So, in terms of the thoughts around mental health and how many people are taking that on, I do find that a lot of my clients are of a younger age bracket. So I'm talking kind of
mm,
35 and below.
mm,
So I get the sense that they're a little bit more, I guess, open, not to say that other
mm,
age ranges aren't. That's the
mm,
case. I really
mm,
can't speak to it because um, it's quite a big question. But what I have seen and noticed is that there is more of a shift in terms of mental health within the Muslim community, and we're having more and more charities, more and more qualified therapists who are also Muslim, and also people who are practicing within uh, a Muslim psychology framework as well. So I
mm.
think it's a great time, to revive a lot of the Islamic traditions when it comes to mental health and well-being, and um, finding that balance between all types of health.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it might be actually a good idea as well to kind of speak a little bit more about the difference actually between counseling and coaching. Because I realized as I was, going through the questions now, I was like, maybe some of our dear listeners here don't know the difference. I mean, both ourselves come from similar backgrounds, so we know. So can we just talk a little bit more about the difference between counseling and coaches, just in case individuals here think, okay, you know what, I'm not sure what I need. So if we just spend just a little bit talking a bit more about that, if that's okay with you.
Sure. It's a bit of a hot topic question,
Mm,
depending on who you might ask, in terms of depending on the coach you might ask, depending on the therapist you might ask.
yeah.
The best way I can describe it is that we have past, present, and we have future.
Mm,
And in terms of counseling and therapy, that really sits a little bit more in that present and past
mm,
area, and
mm,
coaching sits more in the present and the future area. And it's not to say that they aren't overlapping, but the main point is that um, coaching focuses on forward action, on aspiration, on trying to find find a good word here, trying to find that inspiration within the present for that person, so they can start taking action and
mm,
start thinking about where they want to be, how they want to be.
mm, mm. But whereas counseling is more about something like, for example, the past that they need to kind of deal with before kind of moving into the future. Is that something that you would say kind of describes it as well?
Yes, and it's looking at some of the deeper underlying patterns, what's going on there, but it's also in the present. I do want to highlight it is also in the present and dealing with how things from the past may be impacting the present and how they want to manage that in the present as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, yeah. And I love, mashallah, how you offer the two so that you can kind of provide the best service for clients, inshallah. So that's great.
Inshallah.
Coming back to talking about Muslims, I'm wondering, mashallah, because as you said that you've got 95% of your clients, mashallah, as Muslims, all of this service is open for all. And I think a lot of Muslims, they do that because when I get clients as well, they say that we wanted a Muslim counselor because we feel more comfortable
Hmm.
with with working with a Muslim, because whereas with non-Muslims that they don't understand the culture. Not saying that they don't, a lot of them do, and it's part of our a part of our the service that we do is that we understand the different cultures as well that we work
Hmm.
with. But a lot of them, they do say that, well, there are certain things that were suggested to us that is not really within our religion, so
Hmm.
that's why a lot of them benefit from going to a Muslim counselor. Now, how important is this work for Muslims, considering the fact that not many of them have very positive views about going to mental health therapists? And as you said, inshallah, the younger ones tend to kind of seek the service a bit more. How important is that for us as Muslims to even function quite well if there is something like, if we've gone through traumas in the past, for instance, they will affect us. A lot of people, what I've noticed is that they would say that, you know what, just ignore it. Nothing, if you ignore it, it's like it doesn't exist. So it's a strategy that a lot of us follow that still affects us, even if it happened from a long time ago. It still, if we push it away, it still affects us even after many, many years. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how important it is for us as Muslims to take that into consideration? And I kind of give the example of, if we go through physical pain, we tend to go to the doctor, right? And that's
Hmm.
the same as mental health, difficulties, that we need to go to the experts to help us. So that even I see it for Muslims even very important for us to fulfill our obligations in our religion, because we do need to function quite well in order for us to do that. There is a difference when you're not
Hmm.
functioning very well or functioning very well, specifically, for example, in the prayers. And I noticed that, when I'm a bit upset, for example, in my prayers, my mind kind of goes off and wanders. So I feel that it is very important for us Muslims to take that into consideration and to seek the support if we need it. So if we can talk a little bit more about that, Sonia.
Mashallah, you've touched on a lot of points that I will raise about Muslim mental health
Mm,
and how we are a whole person. Who
yeah.
we are in ibadah is not different to who we are if we're not feeling okay because of
Mm,
perhaps we're stressed. We are all one, we're an entire person, and we need to constantly do our best to regulate ourselves. So our emotional health, our mental health is
mm,
included in that.
mm.
How our mindset is included in that. What we think, how we think of Allah matters.
Yeah.
And that is and can be directly connected to how we're emotionally feeling.
Mm,
So really, I think the main thing to say is, being Muslim, we are human beings, and that's important. I can't really add any more or say any more than what you have said, other than
mm,
to say that I pray that others who are struggling are able to
mm,
rebalance some of the friction that's happening between feeling like they can't reach out for support versus feeling it goes against how they believe or their belief, their faith, their iman. It's all intertwined. You're one person. We're all one person.
Yeah, yeah. Jazakallah khair for that. Perhaps also we can talk, we've got a few minutes before the break, if we can talk a little bit more about, in order to kind of make this a bit more clearer for, for the audience to understand about the importance of it as well. In case, alhamdulillah, I think, as I said, nowadays there are a lot of changes. Just to kind of talk a little bit more about it. If somebody goes through traumas in their childhood, for instance, and they don't deal with it, what kind of impacts could it have for them in adulthood? But before you answer this question, I'm just going to quickly remind our dear listeners that we have Sonia Yekinni with us on the show today, who is a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counsellor and Coach, and the founder of Balancing Bridges, which is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to be. Dear listeners, today's show is pre-recorded, so we won't be able to take any questions, but please feel free to text or WhatsApp your thoughts about the show on 0779 481822, or you can comment on Facebook as well. So Sonia, yes, coming back to yourself regarding the impact of traumas, if we go through it, for example, in childhood, if we don't deal with it, if we don't heal from it, does it mean it's kind of dealt with, or it still impacts us in our adulthood, and how does that look like?
Sure. What that looks like to each individual will be very different. So a person might experience trauma when they're younger, and actually that allows them to feel more motivated and they've got something to strive for. They don't want to go back to that experience, and that's it's a driving force for them. For others, it can be a pulling force in that it can impact how they interact with other people in society. They may have social anxiety, or they may find that they struggle with their own self-esteem, feeling like they're good enough, or feel as though that their relationships with those that they're close to just never feels like it's good enough, never feels like it's healthy enough. They may struggle with accepting that sometimes difficulties happen versus they're always living in difficulty, and that requires a little bit of a shift to understand that it's sometimes and not always. So the outcomes of experiencing something or some kind of trauma in the past is honestly quite endless. In the endless, both in a positive respect and a negative or less than positive respect. Yeah, there's so much that I could say on this point. I think the main point is really to not underestimate what's happened to an individual, no matter how many years it's been. Human beings are the one, human beings have this ability that they just think about an event and they could experience it through all of their emotions quite viscerally, as though they were back there.
Yeah. And if somebody's listening, for example, and they decide to go for therapy, is it too late, or is it just the right time?
It's always the time that Allah has decided.
Yeah.
It's always the time that is best. It's a journey, and therapy, you will inshallah get the therapist that works best for you. What's important is that you or anyone looking for therapy has taken the brave step to start. And that's the thing to focus on, that you want to start and you want the support over, it's too late or there's just too much time has passed.
Yeah. I always say, subhanAllah, as you said, it's the right time when Allah chooses for it, right? And I would say it's never too late. Working on yourself is a journey that we continuously invest in, every step of our lives, and it doesn't end. We just keep, self-developing and, working ourselves, and that is the best investment, not just for people individual, but Muslims specifically, because that puts us in a better place in our worshipping to Allah, in our salah, or on everything, when we are in a better mental state. And we know it's in everyday life is that when we are happier, for example, we do things with passion, we able to look after even others, not just ourselves, in a better way. So having that better, good state, mental or good mental state is something that is, I believe is very important for Muslims as well. So I always say it's never too late. The right time is when Allah chooses it, and it's better to kind of heal and deal with things rather than keep brushing it off, because it will impact on every day of our lives. It will impact on our thoughts, and not just that. For example, for your parents, that will be passed on to our children as well if we haven't healed from our own experiences, and that's something, of course, we wouldn't want our children to carry, because then it just means that it's passed from one generation to another. It's something that it's always best to kind of deal with it when you're ready. And for example, I've had clients where, for instance, they come in, they're not ready, but then they go away knowing that this experience was a bit positive for them, that they are willing to do it when they are ready, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Jazakallah khair for all that you've shared, Sonia. And inshallah, we are approaching a break. So, dear listeners, this is Inspire Family Luton on 105.1. We will go for a short break, inshallah. So, please don't go away. There's some interesting stuff, inshallah, to share after the break as well. So, we'll see you very shortly, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to the Arise to Success show. We have Sonia Yekinni with us today, who is a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counsellor and Coach, as well as the founder of Balancing Bridges, which is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to become. This bespoke service integrates creative therapeutic approaches and coaching skills to allow clients to consciously explore, restore, and thrive. Dear listeners, this is a pre-recorded show, so we're not going to be able to take any live questions, but please feel free to send your thoughts about the show on 07779 481822, or you can comment on Facebook as well. So, Sonia, before the break, we were talking about the service that you offer, which combines both counseling and coaching, and how you help your clients, how important it is for individuals, specifically Muslims, to seek the support needed when it comes, for example, to mental health, as it is something very important for us to look after ourselves and take care of even our Islamic obligations as well. And now, inshallah, we'll be moving to talk a little bit more about you. I was really impressed, mashallah, with some of the things that you've shared about yourself. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. One of them, mashallah, is that you're a traveler and you're currently, mashallah, traveling. And that's why we're doing this show as a recorded one. So tell us more about your passion to travel, and did it come from your family, who you described as live to travel?
Oh yeah, it definitely came from my family. I had a passport before I could do anything really.
Yeah.
One of those passports where they just about have the baby's eyes open.
Oh, yes.
So yes,
Yeah.
honestly, traveling is just that physical shift that's needed in order to make the other shifts possible. I from a very young age, being going off for summer holidays for the whole 8 weeks in a whole nother environment, completely different to the UK, where you just see a different quality of life when it comes to what you are blessed with, but also just the different ways people interact with each other. Yeah, my brother is pretty hilarious in that he counts everywhere else everyone else has gone, that he also goes as well. So when I went to India, although he hasn't been to India, he goes, I went to India too, and he'll take a story and then so yeah, we compete on interesting places to go. I do think I sometimes pick the more out there strange places, and people ask, okay, why did you go there?
Yeah. Why?
Why not is the question. Why not?
Love it.
I enjoy getting out of my own comfort zone and experiencing something different, so that I too can start to embody different changes that I would like to have. Also, it's a time to get away from the norm. and, reset, think about other things. Can I have a new perspective on something I might be struggling with? Can I get the, motivation to do something that I've always wanted to do? So yeah, and there's this thing where I'm always like, I'm on a plane, and it's like the one time I have zero control, and I can actually admit wholeheartedly I have zero control. In other times in our lives, yes, we have, Allah is the one who's in control, but there's something about being on a plane, knowing that you can't see what's in front of you, you can't see the pilot, that genuinely, you are there on Allah's grace. Or
Yeah.
as always, but there's a physical experience in being on a plane, and I really do sit in that, and
Yeah. I find that quite powerful, mashallah, that you've shared that, because then this is where you say, as you say, is you practice putting that tawakkul on Allah, right? Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because I think that's quite important, practicing that tawakkul on Allah when you're not in control. How does it feel? The challenges of actually, believing that you're not in control, and the beauty of putting that trust in Allah.
There's a few stages to it, in that initially there is a tension and a fight between like my own abilities, abilities I want to have, capabilities I want to have, and then when I can finally reconnect to Tawakkul on Allah, there is so much peace, and there's almost a complete freedom to say that genuinely there's nothing I can do. I have done everything I can do, and the rest in the best of hands, Allah's.
Yeah, absolutely, that's beautiful. Jazakallah khair. With the travel, coming back to the travel, how did you survive in COVID? If you're a traveler.
Okay, so COVID was the longest stretch of non-travel I've ever had. It was actually to the point I got my sister to just book me any flight to anywhere. So I went to Belfast because I was like, I need to get on a plane. Like,
Yeah,
I need to be on a plane. I need to change locations. Alhamdulillah, being blessed to be able to do something like that. Not everyone's able to. So it was the longest stretch. However, it helped with my journey because that longest stretch was also me studying, me working, me doing placements. So I also wasn't able to travel. So those who could travel, I lived vicariously through them. My family WhatsApp of pictures for when my sister did travel. I was just like, oh, cool.
So subhanAllah, it kind of COVID, it kind of came at the right time for you, because then you had to focus on your studies and so on, right? So it kind of forced you not to travel, although you couldn't, and you still tried to travel.
Yes, alhamdulillah. It did come at the right time. And I didn't try and travel. I literally accepted that I wasn't able to travel, and knew that was the stage of my journey I was at. That was the stage I needed to be focused. And yeah, alhamdulillah for that focus.
Alhamdulillah. I'm just going to quickly remind our dear listeners, just in case anybody joins us a bit later, is that we have Sonia Yekinni on the show with us today, who is a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counsellor and Coach, and the founder of Balancing Bridges, which is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to be. This is a pre-recorded show, so we won't be able to take any questions at the moment, but please feel free to send them, or send your thoughts about the show at 0779 481822, or you can also message us on Facebook. So, Sonia, with the importance of travel, do you think that there is an importance to it for Muslims, for example, to get to know about different cultures, different traditions, kind of accepting different opinions, for instance? I'll speak a little bit about myself, during travels and so on. I find that I get to know a lot more about cultures, even, learn a little bit about, or a little bit of a different language. Not a lot, but kind of bits here and there. I remember I had a friend who spoke a little bit of different languages, and whenever we go to a restaurant, for example, she'll try to find out the different languages of, the people who work at the restaurants. And then she'll actually speak the language, and they love it. They're like, oh, are you from there? So does it help us as Muslims to be more open-minded, to be more accepting, for example, as individuals and as Muslims in specific?
Well, travel is definitely a way to connect, and language is also definitely a beautiful way to connect. In terms of traveling as Muslims, I think I've always said to myself that it's a way to see the beauty in Allah's creation. human form and non-human forms.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to know. Like in the Quran, it talks so many times around pondering, reflecting on Allah's creation. I think that's the biggest thing I take away from travel, being a Muslim. And yes, definitely there is some learnings when you realize that different people might have slight differences when it comes to the way we may practice, and it does allow for more tolerance. However, when we're already honoring their beauty, whether it's their culture or their food, being tolerant is that much more easier.
Absolutely. Jazakallah khair for that. And now about your interests and hobbies, which I found really interesting when you said that you've done the one that I found quite fascinating is skydiving. Wow. Yeah, and you've got interests like hiking, playing basketball. And I actually wanted to speak a little bit more about those kind of interests as well, because I feel like some people look at therapists as like, it's like all you do just, study people and you don't really have much of a life. So I felt it was quite important that we talk a little bit about that you actually have hobbies and interests and your own time and you do your own things. So tell us more about that, specifically skydiving. I find that, wow. How did you do it?
It's not a constant skydiving. It's the one time. It's the one
Oh,
time.
feel good.
Alhamdulillah. Actually, it's quite challenging to find a female tandem diver. So that's the actual boundary to that. But skydiving, again, another chance for tawakkul on Allah. Just, hey,
Yeah.
I'm free falling. That was an incredible experience. And definitely took myself out of my comfort zone for that.
Yeah.
It was also a test of patience, because we turned up at the there's like an airstrip to do it, and we turned up I think 3 times, and cloud cover didn't allow us to, so we had to come back again to get the right skydiving conditions.
Wow. Interesting.
And just to speak on your point of therapists don't have a a life outside. Big part about being a therapist, being a counselor, is boundaries. You've got to have boundaries. You've got to have things that you do elsewhere, because our mental health is also important, so that we're able to be there for our clients as well. Hiking is just my love of movement. Any form of like using my limbs is just great. Like the idea that I can say I went up, and went back down again. In fact, when I my first hike was Snowdonia, which is kind of funny because most people are like, why would you do that one first? So it took me 9 hours to go up and down, but I absolutely loved it. And basketball is just a sisterhood for me. I play basketball as often as I can with a wonderful group of sisters. We just take over a gym, the cameras, they get turned off, and we just go for it.
Love it.
Yeah.
MashaAllah, that's amazing. And did you find that you've had a hobby in these or those kind of interests from a young age, or is it something that you've explored? Because a lot of people, they say that when I ask them what are your hobbies, for example, like, oh, I don't know, I don't have a hobby. So is it something that you've always had in you? You've had to explore it, see to find what you're interested in, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, my hobby as a child was more drawing, creativity, hence then studying illustration, animation, design, etc. So those were my hobbies when I was younger. I think these ones I had to go out and explore, because I found, especially when you go into full-time work, you do need the other things to balance out how much time you spend working. So yeah, it was just really a trial and error. Just be like, I'm okay to look bad. I'm okay to turn up and know that I'm not good at this and that I will get better, especially when it comes to basketball. I feel like I have some skill sets that are okay. Height helps a little bit. So yeah, it was really just to turn up and say, just because, like, why not? And at the very least, I have an experience. I'm a big fan of, paying for experiences over like material things.
Yeah, I love that, mashallah. And you talked about that quite a lot, trying different things, coming out of your comfort zone. You actually repeated that about coming out of your comfort zone quite a lot. So you could tell us more about, which I really like, because it's really difficult for us to do sometimes. So I really want to spend a bit of time talking about coming out of your comfort zone. Was it easy for you? I mean, to kind of decide, okay, I want to try something different. Or it took you a bit of courage to decide to experience different things and come out of the comfort zone. Can tell us a bit more about that to help our dear listeners if anybody's feeling stuck of trying different things or coming out of that comfort zone?
Sure. No, it wasn't an easy thing at all. I think as
Mm,
humans, we are built to want to be comfortable, be safe. We
mm,
understand that our brains are also wired to keep us safe as
mm,
well. That's part of why I try so much so that I can um, create more of a midway point of coming out
mm,
of my comfort zone rather than it always feel like I'm going from complete comfort to discomfort
mm,
with whatever activity I'm getting involved in. So
mm,
really, it's just me constantly challenging myself. Sometimes a real challenge, and sometimes it's a compassionate challenge where I'm just like,
mm,
okay, a bit of that. Can I dip my toe into the swimming pool? Just okay, let's just check it out a little bit. I think it's an important thing for me and what I do, um, to know what it's like to be out of my comfort zone as much as
mm.
possible. So therefore, it's less scary and it's
Yeah.
less distressing. When I say distressing, it's more just that anything that's out of comfort is discomfort. So it's less uncomfortable.
Mm. Yeah, I love what you mentioned there about sometimes you kind of have this sudden change. Sometimes it's more compassionate change, and that's something as well to kind of highlight is that with change we don't have to do it just sudden, and we don't have to kind of go quite extreme with it. It depends.
Mhm.
Everybody's different. I've come across people who, if they decide something, they on it, they make quick changes, but some people need it gradually, right? So we don't have to have this or the other. It depends on how we feel about it. Sometimes we might need to use this, as you said, sometimes we might need to use that. So it's all based on how you feel, and how comfortable you are with it. So we don't have to be harsh with ourselves, and have to make specific extreme changes. It's all about how you feel about it and taking it according to your pace, and
Mhm.
seeing how that works for you. So is that something that you kind of find that this is the case? Sometimes you have to kind of go according, even with your clients, I'm assuming this is the case, right, where you're having to kind of assess their pace and going according to their pace as well.
Absolutely. There is definitely experiencing that thought to action. There's no space between them. Thought to action, it happens. And other
Mm,
times it is piecemeal. It is step by step. And that's
mm,
because there is so much more that a person could be holding, which means that them being able to take these steps feel like giant steps, even
mm,
if outside looking in, it looks like they might as well be a snail, and
mm,
it really depends on the individual and the context. And both are incredible. No matter what that step is, that's an amazing step for the individual.
mm,
And it really speaks to that kind of business of comparing and not
mm.
comparing our actions, not me. I'm not comparing my steps and my actions with another person.
Mm, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's about going according to your pace, and I mean, it's great to gain inspiration, for example, for somebody who did something that you're passionate about or you think is a great change. But being kind to yourself and going according to your own pace as well is very important. And I'm just going to remind our dear listeners, in case somebody joined us a bit later, is that we have Sonia Yekinni with us on the show today, who is a BACP Accredited Integrative Therapist, Counselor, and Coach, and the founder of Balancing Bridges, which is an online service that empowers and supports people to move between who they were, who they are, and who they want to become. Dear listeners, this is a pre-recorded show, so we won't be able to take any live questions, but please feel free to send your thoughts about the show on 0779 481822, or you can message us on Facebook as well. Sonia, coming back to your interests and hobbies, mashallah, you've got some really interesting ones out there that you've tried: hiking, playing basketball, and skydiving. What's the importance of having hobbies and interests in our lives? Is it important, and how important is it? Is it important for us to make time for it, for example? And is there specific guidelines on spending, doing your hobbies and interests daily, weekly?
Mhm, mhm. It's a good question. It really goes back to the individual, because for some
Mm,
people, their lives are full.
mm,
Their hobby is their child. Their hobby is, refitting their home. They're all things
mm,
that, are within their kind of their life bubble. Whereas,
mm,
perhaps if you are someone who lives by themselves, who works a lot, doing a job that perhaps isn't as fulfilling, then a hobby is important, especially, for example, during lockdown when everybody was at home and they were
Yeah.
sitting still in front of whatever setup they had, or maybe they had a standing desk. Getting
Mm.
out of the house, moving your limbs, and having something else to do, even if it was to, I don't know, go to a laughing club.
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
that's something, and then that helps to rebalance. I think it does go back to part of why I, chose part of my name, Balancing Bridges, because we're
Mm.
always trying to balance where we are in our lives from one
Mm.
end to the other,
Mm.
and try and have as much as possible a balanced way of being.
Mm, absolutely. And I love that. And I just want to point out that sometimes we do go off balance, right? And it's okay. It
Yeah.
happens. It's not, we're not going to always be in a certain state. And that's life. It's just about being kind to ourselves and slowly picking ourselves. Considering the prophets, the Sahabas, they've all gone through challenges. And it's just about working on yourself coming back to talking about according to your pace. It's not going to be the same with everyone, seeing what works out for you, what doesn't, and being kind. I think that's very important, to be kind, because, and I'm guilty of that. I used to be very harsh on myself, but then you learn slowly to or unlearn bad habits and
Mhm,
and, and
mhm.
relearn the habits where it works better for you. So it's something that we go through, but it's always about relearning those habits and considering taking care of yourself in a kind and compassionate way, and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And what you mentioned
Sure.
about interests and hobbies as well is that I get that quite a lot, where people, I've gone through that as well, where I was like, okay, I don't know what's my hobby. Try different things. You never know. Sometimes you might enjoy it, sometimes you don't enjoy it, but then you find what you like. And once you find it, as you said, Sonia, it works differently for everybody. Some people are really busy. Some people are able to, for example, some of them really like drawing, like how you liked it when you were young. And that's something that can be done on a daily basis, for instance. Other things
Mhm,
can be done weekly, and so on and so on. But having that hobbies and interests is something quite important to help us work on that balance, as you mentioned. With that's where Balancing Bridges came from. But also, it's okay to go off balance sometimes, because a lot of people feel uncomfortable with going off balance. It's not a
mhm.
comfortable state. But then sometimes we need this to make changes in our lives, and that's what I've noticed from my own experiences, is that being off balance sometimes is the moment where you make better decisions for your life. So it's just about embracing it and working on it. What are your thoughts on that?
There's always a spectrum to things, even when you think about mental health, there is the
Mm.
mental health continuum, there is the thriving end and there is the ill mental health or the crisis end. And at every kind of moment, it's either that you're kind of doing your best to kind of pick yourself up, or doing your best to push yourself forward. So there is no kind of you must be at this stage. It's where you're at with what you have, and you're doing the best you can. So in no way am I trying to advocate that everyone must be balanced.
Mm.
I'm not completely sure that it's possible to be completely balanced.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's more of a
Is it?
gauge, more of a
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I think it's work in progress, isn't it? It's a
absolutely.
continuous thing that you work on, bettering yourself and self-developing Islamically, personally, and so on. So it's something that it doesn't stop somewhere. It just continues working, and that's how it is as Muslims, is that we continue working on ourselves and don't give up and continue that process.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah. So to end with, Sonia, what advice would you give our brothers and sisters to look after the mental and physical well-being?
Ooh. I think it's something we've echoed here a few times, and that's
Mm.
about being compassionate
Yeah.
and offering oneself that compassion, and taking even the smallest step towards well-being, um, mentally, emotionally, and knowing that that's can be enough for the moment. I think there's a lot of, that critical experience or that critical relationship with um, mental health, or with how well someone is doing. Knowing in that moment that you're doing the best you can with what you have, um, and yeah, and that
Yeah.
you're doing okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's taking it at a moment at a time sometimes. And I would just add as well that not to compare ourselves to others, specifically social media, because I get that quite a lot as well, is that, we look at social media and think, oh my God, somebody's doing so well. What's wrong with me? Why am I not doing well? You know what? Social media is the worst place to look at to see if somebody's doing well or not, because social media just shows the best part of the individual's life. But, we don't tend to put on social media if we're not doing very well, right? So everybody is having their own journey. And whatever Allah puts us through is just right for us, and it's right for them, whatever they go through. So it's just about embracing what you are experiencing at that moment and working on it, inshallah, for bettering ourselves. And the more we better ourselves, the more we can offer to others as well. Because a lot of people, they struggle to work on themselves because they feel that, even children, I've had that, children who are so used to having, looking after others or taking care of others or being caretakers. The idea of looking after themselves is not something that they're not used to. So we completely understand that. It's just about taking it a step at a time and being, having that kindness to yourself and slowly unlearning those habits and replacing them with habits that are beneficial for you, so that you are in a better place to look after others as well. So that's what I kind of emphasized on. Working ourselves is not just something selfish. It's not something that's going to come back to us. It's going to come back to those around us, for those who have families, for instance, parents, and it's going to come back to us, working better on ourselves in terms of religious aspects. Because as I explained earlier before the break, is that we become in a better place to give back to Allah as well, in our salah, we're in a better mental state, and so on and so on. So that mental health and looking after ourselves is something that is hugely beneficial for us as individuals, as Muslims. It's beneficial for the community around us, and it's beneficial for us in terms of performing our Islamic acts. So Jazakallah khair, Sonia, for all that you've shared, and your own as well personal experiences, and being a traveler, and hobbies and interests. Specifically, I have to say, skydiving is something I want to do, but it's just seems scary. So hopefully, maybe one day, inshallah.
Okay, no, definitely put it out there, figure it out. Upside is that it was a tandem dive, so you're strapped to someone. So it's not as scary as doing a solo dive.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah,
Jazakallah khair for
inshallah.
that.
Okay.
And so, dear listeners, we have reached the end of this week's show, inshallah, for the Rise to Success. Sonia, thank you so much again for being here with us and sharing with us those valuable things. Thanks to all my dear listeners as well for being with us as well, and hoping, inshallah, you have enjoyed and benefited from this session as much as I did. Just a reminder that this show takes place every Monday, 6 to 7, so please do tune in. And next week's guest is a mindfulness life coach and mentor. So we've had Sonia with us today, who's an accredited integrative therapist, counselor, and coach. And next week, we're going to have, inshallah, we'll follow up with a mindfulness coach and mentor to learn more about mindfulness coaching and mentoring as well. So please do stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll see you next week. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.